You know what? Zantares does fucking choke the shit out of finals, doesn't he? Like, Aurora is actually appalling in grand finals for some reason. Like, you put them against the same team in the round of it, they probably could win, but...
There's other teams out there who can overtake them.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one. Here's why. This is Counterpoints. And one thing that I enjoy about doing this show, I've never even told Pimp this, is I'll give you a quick analogy. One of the actual original flagship show of Last Free Nation is obviously the League of Legends show, Summoning Insight, because me and Monty have actually been doing that show since 2014. I mean, he really stopped doing it like a couple of years ago. And he had a little break in between with Overwatch League, but in general, we've done that for like the better part of like a solid decade, and we've done a lot of shows. And one of the things that's fun is this. When I first started that show, it was more of a traditional podcast. I mean, it was actually one of the first in esports, where the idea was I was like the host mainly, because back then I wasn't a big league person. That was like a new game to me. Monty was obviously like the main expert, giving all the takes. And then if we could, back then when the esports was smaller, I used to try and get like big name guests, like the most famous, you know, like mid laner from Denmark or some fucking American AD cat. I would get these massive names, right? And the show used to do really good numbers. It still does to this day. But what's cool, this is the little self-aggrandizement is, what's cool is everyone used to be a hater and be like, yeah, but who cares what you and Monty think? You were never pros. And in my case, at least Monty commentated the fucking like Korean league. I've never worked in league outside of making content. But what's fun, Pimp, is when we brought the show back like 3 or 4 years ago, and me and Monty started doing it again, because we wanted to make it every single week and we wanted to have it hit a certain time frame, we couldn't get the guests anymore because, for example, at the time Monty lived in Korea, so I had to record it at like, I'm going to say like 1 p.m. in the afternoon in Europe. So the joke is you could barely get a European guest for that, man. Never mind an American guest. So actually the show just became the two of us with no guests. And what I love, you'll appreciate this, is viewership didn't drop at all. In fact, the viewership stayed awesome. And up until Monty quit like a year and a half ago, it was the #1 show on LFN. Even just me and all two boomers who everyone told were irrelevant, sitting, just talking about the game every week. We had mad... All I'll say is this, Pimp. Normally, if you're on stuff, people hate on you, say, I wish he wasn't there. Normally, when I'm on stuff, they lie and go, I just watched Casado Maui. I hate Thorin. Well, there's only the two of us on this show. By that logic, the two hated people with no charismatic, beloved figure. And this show gets pretty good viewership. So all I'm going to say is, there's a great quote from Shakespeare. Me think the lady doth protest too much. You're all here because you either A, do love us, or B, you love to hate us, don't you? So let's get back to our usual grind of saying all that stuff that you love to hate or secretly love, whichever one of the two it is. So here's where we start this, okay, Pimp, right? We're gonna resurrect a tradition of me and Pimp, which is we're two of the only people that when Navi won the first CS2 major, everyone else was like, you know, oh my God, this is incredible. Oh, the miracle run, Alexi. I was even, you know, part of me was like, oh, Alexi's won, Bits won, and we were the only two people like, yeah. Sort of bullshit though, wasn't it? Like, you know, we're the only two that sort of like, you know, as the balloon was getting expanded, had the little pin out like, pop. Now here's the problem, Pimp. You know how this show works now. We start with the controversial take. Spoiler, I imagine, I don't make the headlines, but I imagine the title's going to be something like, was Navi winning Pro League even that good? Or is Navi actually even one of the best teams? Because we discussed like what topic we'd talk about first. It sounds like we had a similar position again, Pimp, because even though part of me wants to go, wow, I didn't think Navi would even win a trophy this season. If I just look at the field with no other information, hey, yeah, if Vitality wasn't there, fuck it. But Spirit was there, and Mouse was there, and Furia was there. The problem is, though, the obvious place we have to start on our hate rate, as we'll get into all the rest is, they did end up, because of Mouse and Spirit fucking up the playoffs, unfortunately, getting what ended up being not that crazy a run of opponents. I mean, the craziest one, obviously, is the idea that you get Foot, who we've praised on past episodes. They're not even a playoff team. If you could get Foot in the semis now before their experience, you're supposed to win that game. In the final, they played Aurora. Boys, I think people have finally realised this. I've finally come to the conclusion, like, you know what? Zantares does fucking choke the shit out of finals, doesn't he? Like, Aurora is actually appalling in grand finals for some reason. Like, you put them against the same team in the round of it, they probably could win, but they don't. So where we start on this, Pip, essentially, we're going to start a little bit negative. There'll be some positives in there, certainly, because it was a great performance, but sure. we're gonna bring the temperature down a little bit on Navi.
Yeah, a little bit, you know, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people are having an easy time to obviously celebrate. You win a trophy, all things are good, you know. Now Navi's back, you know, one of the top contenders heading into Blast Water. Yeah. Maybe they'll win that trophy too. And it's like, stop for a moment, you know. There's absolutely no way that Navi, with one tournament at Pro League, is all of a sudden rewriting what's been happening the last 6 months. I hate that whole, you know, mentality that we, based on recency bias, we get to discredit everything we learned up until that point. I think the main takeaway for me at Pro League in regards to Navi was that, yeah, they played better. They were great. They won against whoever was in front of them. I'm never going to fault Blade. I'm never going to fault Navi for not beating, Mouse,
Yeah, of
Spirit,
course.
Furia for that matter as well, because they never had the opportunity, right? No
Absolutely.
one was putting it up against them. So
Yes.
in that regard, you're right. There's a lot of positivities and there's a lot of, positive angles you can attack if you're a Navi fan. But if you zoom out just for a moment and put it into context and allow yourself to think about it a bit nuanced, yeah, it didn't really change my perception of Navi. I expected Navi to be able on a good day to beat the Mongols. They did. As you said, beating Foot in a playoff game, I expected Blade to be able to do that. And beating Aurora in a grand final, as you said as well, with the way Aurora have been playing as of late and in general with what Aurora are showing, yeah, I'd expect Navi to win that game. So I'd say they were the favorites in all three games.
Yes.
Now, credit for winning it, credit for winning a trophy as well, but that doesn't change my mind, and I even had the discussion during the Blast Disc segment as well. Like, I wouldn't put them in the same category as Spirit, Mouse, Falcons for that matter just yet. Now they piqued my interest, they've shown that they're capable of it. Now they have to confirm that that's the case here in Rotterdam at Blast. So in terms of changing how I view Navi for the future, no, it's just a team now that is trending upwards after for a long, long time having been basically trending downwards. Then they had the good showing at the major where like, okay, enough reason for you guys to stick together and see if you can figure it out. And then the beginning of the season was also lukewarm to some degree where, yeah, Navi is a top 5, top 6, top 7 team, but not really a team I have high on the list in terms of winning stuff. Does that change with winning Pro League? Not really. To some degree, the only thing that changes for me is that now they're closer to breaking in there. Now, obviously, if they do well here in Rotterdam, if they confirm their position, if they go into a semi-final, or they even go into the grand final and end up losing to Vitality, or lose a close semi-final versus Spirit or a close semi-final versus Fury or whatnot, then I'll be more positive because then I have two, recent events I can connect together and be like, okay, so this is the direction they're heading in. But I even had the opportunity to speak to Blade in a winner's interview after the first game here in the tournament, and he told me, after I asked him, so at Pro League, obviously no Vitality, no big team sort of in the playoff, and he said as soon as he saw the bracket, the entire team sat down and they agreed we have to win this tournament, like
baller.
no excuse.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly, and I like that internal pressure, because a lot of people will be like, yeah, but we take one game at a time, and you're never guaranteed to win anything. It's like Blade said it to his team. We have to win this tournament now, given that we gifted this opportunity. And I respect Navi for grabbing the opportunity. I expect Navi for making the most out of it. But in terms of me, from my analytical point of view and zooming out, and looking at Pro League in isolation, it doesn't change what I think about Navi. I think they are a decent team. I think they could be a good team, but they need to show me, and I guess themselves as well, that they can do that 2, 3, 4 tournaments in a row.
Yeah, actually, by the way, on that is one thing. I made the joke on Snake and Banter that I actually made a tweet just like that. Like, hey, this win is fool's gold because look at who they beat. And the joke is, even though it was right after the win, actually, as soon as he got on his phone, Blade liked the tweet. So I actually think, like I said, I don't think that's like he just doesn't understand English and he saw his name. Like, I think he's just so based that actually he has a very real... I've told you, Carrigan's like this if you talk to him, not just on camera. Like, he has a really, really down-to-earth perspective on where his team is. And even if they were the best, but they were like second best, he would be like, we have to beat this team here or we have to do this thing over here. So I actually love that because I am actually kind of sick of how it's one thing if you're doing like PR, as in like you're doing some Conor McGregor, like I'm hyping the game up and saying we're the best. But sometimes people do actually win easy brackets and think that means they're the best or some other. I mean, here's the way I'll give them a compliment for the easy bracket. I actually said this on the show, but I thought it's an angle people miss. When you say that thing of you can already beat who's in front of them, well, here's the cool thing about this tournament. They did it. Remember, the same thing should apply to Spirit and Mouse, but they lost to the teams that were lesser, that were in front of them. Spirit shouldn't lose to Astralis. Now should be losing to Foot. The point is, I would have said about those teams, that's not a hard opponent, but they didn't even take care of business. The fair play about Navi is this. They did actually do what is necessary to do, and they successfully, convincingly won all these games. I'll even throw this out there as well. Even though I agree with you, the real problem of why like everything isn't just fine in Navi is because when people wanted a roster move, they feel like you're lacking a little bit of firepower. Look, this event, Makazi was fucking insane. Problem is, let me see that again. Or it doesn't have to be that. You know what? That was probably too much. Just give me like 80% of that or 90% of that. If you did that like regularly every 2 or 3 of them, now we can talk about are they getting closer? I'm with you. Because the problem I have with Navi always is this. I do think the floor of the team's really good. That's not one I'm worried about. Like I say, I'm not as worried about them bombing like a Spirit or a Falcons earlier, which can happen to those squads. The problem becomes the following, which is if they really do play Vitality or some massive team in a big BO5 final, there's a lot of teams I do think would still beat them. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. I think the main point I take away from that would be the floor, as you're describing as well. I think the floor of Navi is high, and I think that's based on the system, based on Blade, and how he's been integrating all those players together, and also the fact that the core of that lineup have been together for a long time. You know, wonderful Alexi B, Immer, bit for that matter as well. I also agree on your Makasi point. Funny thing, you know, as always, you know, with this reaction community we're in, I think I also said during Blast that obviously Kyusuke is a bigger talent than Makasi, and I was laughed at and I was reamed out on HLTV forums. And it's like I feel like that is one of the most, you know,
it's not even that hard take, is it? Yeah, I know.
No, it's like one of the most lukewarm takes you can have. That Kyusuke is a bigger talent than Makasi. Like one player was basically sought after by all the big teams, you know, and paid out for a lot of money. And another one was being brought up from an academy team where you're like, I'm not quite sure if this is going to work out. So all the respect to Makasi for showing what he did. And as you said, you know, just give me 70 or 75% of that on a consistent basis. And then we can maybe eliminate the biggest problem I have with Navi, which is the lack of firepower. I think when you compare them to the likes of Spirit, you compare them to the likes of Falcons, Vitality for that matter, Furia, I think they lack a little bit in firepower. And Blade even also said that during the interview he had Blast, that's been one of the issues they're having. You know, sometimes he feels like the game plan is not an issue, the map pool was not an issue until Train was removed. He obviously feels that was a big hit to Navi as well, but he, you know, since that they figured it out, you know, and still have a pretty decent map pool, but sometimes you feel like the firepower is something they could work on or figure out, you know, solutions to get better at. So if Makasa comes in and solves that problem by being, as you said, you know, just 80 or 85% of that, you know, the MVP performance like at Pro League, maybe that eliminates enough of that we then again can talk about Navi, you know, being in the same echelons of teams like Spirit, Mouse, you know, just below Vitality, you know, basically in that group of teams. But one tournament doesn't change that. And that's what I hate about, you know, the reactionary community that we're in, you know, that yes, it's in isolation, it's nice. And as you said, they beat whoever was in front of them. And you got to get credit for that. They won a trophy in an era where, you know, for all we know, you only win trophies when Vitality doesn't show up. And that's kind of how the landscape is at right now. So, you know, massive missed opportunity for Spirit, massive missed opportunity for Mouse. Navi were the ones to do it. For that, they deserve credit. But in terms of like looking ahead at Cologne, looking ahead at the major, would I place Navi as one of the 4 teams I think will be in the semifinal as of right now? Probably not. Are they the first contender to knock out a team like Mouse, Spirit, you name it, out of that field of teams, you know, to be another team in the semifinal? Yes. So they're constantly, you know, on the brink of making, I wouldn't say a breakthrough, but basically re-entering that conversation where they've been before. So in that regard, I'm excited about it and I'm happy about it. I've always been a big fan of Blade. I'll admit it. You know, I think he is, to me, he's probably the most crowned, you know, coach that you can have. I think he's the guy, if I were to build a team, that I would pick first, you know, to be completely honest, out of any coaches out there. I feel like he can make any team work. He's shown me that, you know, one of the critiques that you can have of Sonic is that he still haven't found success in Falcons, which is a team full of superstars, which he's never had before. I know people think Astralis was a team full of superstars. They were not. They were a team that relied on team play, synergy, etc. Whereas I feel like Blade, he made Navi the best team in the world with Simple and Electronic being the superstars. Integrated bit, you know, when it didn't look like there was a possibility. And then he made Navi for a short brief of time the best team in the world as well, where there was no star on the team. You know, when Dale was the best statistic player. So if anything, he's shown me that he can do it with any team, you know, in any system with all the tools that he got at his disposal. So for that, I'm happy. I want Navi to be competitive. I want Navi to be a top team. And if they can confirm that, you know, confirm what we saw at Pro League here at Rotterdam, I'll be the first to cherish it. I'll be the first to clap for it, but I want to see it before I believe it.
By the way, that's also what makes Counter-Strike in the open circuit a beautiful thing. I can tell you in games like League of Legends, where it's leagues that go into other leagues with playoffs at the end, the worst thing is, mate, if you ever have someone fluke win a split in League of Legends, you might have to wait like 3 months until they get tested again. So if they actually are frauds, you won't know until months from now. And actually months from now, maybe things even change. The great thing about Counter-Strike is they're straight into the next tournament, like within a week, in like a week from now, roughly. If they could already be exposed, it could all be nonsense. Or Or, to their credit, they could prove it at this one. And by the way, maybe they even actually do beat some of the squads who said before, and they are the second best team in the tournament, in which case, great, will be a much better episode after that. Because also, another thing as well as this, Pimp, is the real reason why I can't fully go all in on NAVI yet, even though, by the way, low-key, like you, I'm biased. I want to. I actually like the style of play they even have. I find it enjoyable to watch. I like most of the players, even the coach, some of the goats. The reason I can't is many things were different in this run from the NAVI I've seen in the other months before. Like, the major was great, but everything after that was a bit whatever. It was a bit meh. If I look here, like, two other things as well. One, in that final, I won't say it's a life game, because this guy was a top player, HLTV player, but that might have been the best game I've ever seen Wonderful play, mate. Like, in that game, think about what people normally critique Wonderful for. They complain that in big matches, he'll miss, like, an easy shot. He didn't miss a single fucking easy shot in this game. It looked like he hit every single one. He was like fucking Diet Zero or something, like, and I can't expect that to happen all the time. It doesn't. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the same. He wouldn't be the player that's so divisive, and some people think he's good enough, and people always criticize. If he did this every tournament, guys, there wouldn't be any problems in NAVI. And then lastly, and this is the other thing about NAVI that changed that I need to see proven, which is at that event they did two things which I have to see this before I believe it. One, that event alone fixed their Mirage record, bro. Before that, their classic Mirage, they were bleeding up. They were losing all the time. Part of it, by the way, is Makazi is just bonkers on that map too. They were winning all those games there. And then this is the one, obviously they did it in the final. The idea they also like nicked an Anubis. Bro, that's supposed to be the back end of the map pool. So again, if I see some of this continue, then great. By the way, even more props to Blade and any of the players that step up. But I'm with you. I have to see it happen again. I have to see like another example of it, you know. I can't just take it once and then go, cool, that's it, everything's cool, fine, you're going to be second at the major. They could still be the team that goes like ninth at the major. It's not impossible.
Yeah, that's true, you know, but they are climbing upwards, you know, and as we're speaking right now, just a little bit of a teaser. They just beat Falcons, you know, in the group stage here in Blast Rotterdam. So that's another big win, yeah, and especially with Kyusuke coming back into Falcons and actually playing. So again, I just want them to enter that, you know, field of teams below Vitality. Obviously, the way I look at it right now, the landscape of Counter-Strike is obviously Vitality being the top dog, no doubt about that. Then Furia is probably the second chaser in that regard, and then there's a group of teams in Mouse, Spirit, and NAVI could be one of those teams, you know, and I want NAVI to be one of those teams, but there's still a long way before you consistently would put NAVI to be the first contender up against Vitality, you know, or even above Furia. I think they've earned their right to say that it's still the second best team in the world. So, as you said, you know, it's a fun team, it's an interesting team. I've always liked Alexi B as well. I think the whole combination of Blade and Alexi B together. I feel like whenever I speak to both of them, or whenever I see interviews of vlogs and whatnot from the NAVI camp, they seem to have a good relationship and they seem to respect each other's work. I don't think they always agree on how they see Counter-Strike and necessarily how Alexi B wants to call at all times. And I think in the beginning as well, you know, a couple of years ago when they were first matched, it was you know, a lot of the talks were finding the same page and finding the same idea book, you know, and getting on the same page. I think that's obviously happened by now, but I think they respect each other so much and like sort of like respect each other's qualities so much that they enable each other to be the best version of themselves in a sense. So I think that combination of the two is super interesting. And then as we spoke about some of the issues within NAVI has been the firepower. As you said, if Wonderful is stepping up to that level again, give me 80% of that Wonderful in the grand final, or give me the Wonderful that we saw for the vast majority during the Budapest Major. Yeah. I'm all for it. Give me McCarthy, you know, give me 80% of that. Then I don't think firepower is an issue anymore for NAVI, because they've shown before that if you can, for 6 months, you know, go into, was it 6 or 7 grand finals with JL, with Emma, with that iteration of that lineup, you could sure as hell do it again with McCarthy, who's arguably a better fragger than JL. Maybe certain other aspects of the game he's not as good as, but he's a different player type. So I don't, as you said, like, I think that's a fine way to summarize it. I don't worry for NAVI at all. I'm not really looking at NAVI to be a team that I'm ringing any alarm bells for. And even if they don't make the semi-final at the major, I'll be like, yeah, but it's just one roster change, and then they're very much in contention again. Now, obviously, we're probably going to touch upon it later, but FaZe is a bit of a terrible place to be at right now, and maybe not making the major. I'd still say, you know, Frozen in NAVI, that would instantly make them a team that I would put in that category, you know, where I'm like, okay, there's no reason why you couldn't be the second best team in the world after Vitality right now. So, you know, future-wise for NAVI, it's going to be fine. Whether it's going to be this exact 5-man roster, not too sure about. I think it depends on how they're doing Cologne, and depends if a guy like Frozen or someone else is available on the market. But In terms of worrying for Navi and the future and that stuff, not at all. The winning Pro League is going to buy them some time. That's going to buy them some confidence. And if they even don't do well or too well in Cologne, maybe just make the quarterfinal and bow out or somehow, some way not make the playoff. I think one rusty change is more than enough. The foundation and the core of the team is still strong. So, yeah, Navi is and will probably in the iteration it is right now be a team that I have no problem saying that they're going to be around. They're going to be competitive for a long time to come.
By the way, one thing when you were saying that thing about when Alexi B and Blade synergized, that even reminds me of something I actually think is underrated about Navi, which is a lot of people have noticed that Blade also looks like he has the best timeouts in Counter-Strike. Like every time he calls a timeout, it looks like they fix something or they bounce back or they win the next round or they start a little streak. One thing maybe people miss about that is they just end the sentence there, bro. Like it's just Blade. Like, no, when Blade does the timeout, guys, like Alexi has to implement and the other players what he said. Like that also shows me like his team and them are on the same page. Like, I mean, in his case, quite literally, he's like turned to page 17 or whatever, like paragraph 4, subsection A. But as much as people think that's a gimmick, not only does it work, bro, I think they're the only team that even do that. Like, I've seen other people have notes, but not in the way Navi does. Like, they do remind me of some like American football team or something. They have the whole playbook. It's crazy. Like that in alone deserves praise. It's one of the reasons I said, even when they're not the best team, I enjoy watching them play. What they do always makes sense. There's like a logic to how they build the game up and how they tweak it and what they change. It's just, just the question for me is, do they have all the pieces to make the puzzle work? If they don't, then it doesn't matter how good Blade or Alexi be are. Also, since you just referenced it there, obviously Pimp's done it to himself again because in the game, Keisuke less kills than Mikaze, so, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be an ongoing.
Yeah, of course.
I'll call. I don't give a damn, man. I'll call up Mouse Snake because Mouse Snake is currently siding with Makasi on that one. I'm like, what are you on about?
By the way, also the way you phrased it there is what I find wild. What people go mad. If you just said Mikaze Keisuke is a better player, they could maybe debate that right now because Mikaze just had an MVP. If you say talent, though, that just means like how good is the potential? What is like the skills, etc. All I'll say is this: Mikaze has good aim, bro. I actually think because Keisuke has had many good playoffs. Go watch a highlight movie of Keisuke. He has unbelievable aim, mate. I actually think one day he could have the best aim in Counter-Strike. It looks insane to me, mate. So on the talent angle, I think his talent's great. In fact, if anything, even if he never did anything else, I'd consider him a wasted talent. He looks like he's super fucking good at CS, mate.
Yeah, I agree. And that's basically what I said, that he is a bigger talent than Makasi. It doesn't mean that he's not going to be a better player, especially if he doesn't figure it out. But I think, if anything, it's probably more so the environment he's in right now in Falcons is probably not the environment. Just imagine a world where Blade got handsome Kyusuk, and he would integrate him into that system.
Yes.
One can only guess how cool that would be. On that point, actually, before we move on from Navi as well, I just want to say in regards to Makasi as well, that's where I respect Blade so much because from speaking to Makasi a couple of times, from doing a couple of interviews with him, like he's a very happy-go-lucky kind of guy. He loves to play Counter-Strike. You get the sense that he's not putting too much thought into how he conducts himself. He's very natural. Doing interviews with him, he's dropping a lot of F-bombs and has a very, at least I sense, a very simplistic way of thinking Counter-Strike. His way of approaching it is, if I have a good game, we're going to win the game. If I go for a duel and I hit my shot, I'm winning the duel, which is like, yeah, of course, but if every player thought like that, there wouldn't be the masterminds of Counter-Strike. So I think when he first was integrated into Navi, this whole thing you're describing with doing notes and reading papers and having to, do anti-strat and all that kind of stuff, coming from the academy team, he wasn't used to that at all. And that's probably struggled for a couple of months, why it took 3-4 months before the first signs of Mikaze working out. Now it seems like he's on board with it. He understands it. It also seems like Blade is allowing him to still keep his personality, and Mikaze allows himself to still play with confidence. So again, as I said, from just speaking to Blade and Mikaze at this tournament, I'm even buying more into Navi and that project. I think it's a great fit right now. It's a great signing. It took some time before it started to work out, and that's kind of, to me, where the potential lay, because as we said, like the other 4 players have been a core for a long time. Like odds are that Alexi B all of a sudden won't be a 1.0 rating in-game leader. Odds are that Wonderful all of a sudden won't find 1.1 rating more than he used to as well. So if anything is unleashing Navi to become an even more competitive team and potentially winning more trophies, the only unknown and the only, I guess, more potential that we haven't seen yet is how good can Mikaze actually be over time with Navi. So that is also one thing to look out for.
Yes. Also, as you alluded to there, because I've made this point to people and people just don't think it through, you always have to remember, guys, the foot team that we all enjoy was Navi Jr., the team Makaze was on. Well, if you think about it, they don't play anything like Navi. They play way more sort of like up-tempo, just frag out, etc. So I can see why he would have loved it in that team before, but I agree with you. I give both people props, mate. Makaze for adapting, took him a few months, certainly, but also it's not like Blade gave up on him. I can tell you, some people on my shows, bro, when it was only a couple of months into that second season, thought this guy actually wasn't going to make it. They were like, they should just replace him. It didn't work. Like, his numbers aren't good enough, especially because, by the way, he was replacing JL, who had some of the best numbers in the team when it was 2024. So I actually think both parties deserve credit there. I'm sure they had to meet in the middle on some level. Right, okay, let's do it. Obviously, it's the weekly checking in. Like, oh, that FaZe just lost to Tyler, everyone. Great. Here's the reason why we have to do it again, though, Pimp. Because the story keeps developing. Like, think about where we began. I want to just go back in time a minute, right? If you go back to the end of 2024, I want to remind everyone, when they had that first miracle run, the one at the Shanghai Major, it was still a miracle run. Remember, they had to beat fucking Vitality in G2, and then they almost beat Spirit, but they had no business doing that. And obviously, they did make the roster move, because the Rops went to Vitality, unfortunately for them, but they got a leash, right? At the time, people, even though some people already probably then forgot that, like, that second season of 2024 was a bit dodgy for FaZe, people even so knew, like, right, we still need to do something to get back to number one. But when Elise joined the team, the premise was, it might not be impossible to be number one, though. Maybe this can be like at least like a top 3 or 4 team. And then if things go well, maybe they can be number one. And maybe the Elise move is the one, because Elise was really good in call. And then I'll remind people, bro, this is how bad it's got for FaZe. You know how much criticism they got in that first season in 2025 when they were only making the playoffs and they would only go to semis and right at the time, Elise was blasted endlessly. Look, by the way, his T-side stats were mega. Everyone was like, the vibes are bad in the team. It was all that shit. Everyone kept criticizing. That's why, if you remember, Adin Simplo hadn't even been playing CS, was seen as like a move to rescue FaZe, because at the time everyone was out on FaZe. All I'll remind people of is this, bro, if you're a FaZe fan now, you'd fucking like happily agree to go back to that fucking 2025 season one roster with the leash and have a chance to win some games, because in these past episodes, if you use these episodes, this show this year as like a way to chart FaZe, the line just keeps going down and down and down. But the crazy thing is, Finn, even I didn't think it'd go this far down. I thought the line going down would be like, you're the 12th best team and, you know, you can only, you maybe in a really close game, you could lose to a Foot or an Astralis. At this point in time, I have to ask the obvious question. It's a rhetorical question. Like, who couldn't FaZe lose to right now? It feels like almost any team that's like not a random-ass team. Like, the joke is they've just lost to Tai Lu. Guys, I will not be predicting in any tournaments this year Tai Lu to do anything or ever be a playoff team or ever be any team I think's elite in Counter. That's not a diss to Tai Lu. They're just not on that level. So the other thing that's crazy about this one, Pimp, is I don't think I've ever seen a team like just constantly spiral like this. Normally, you know, you go down, but then even then you find a new stasis or something. And then when you add in the whole, like, they've fired Neo but not a player, and maybe Ash is coming, I think they themselves are finally acknowledging what they've been deluded about, which is this roster is over, bro. This 5-man lineup is done. It's cooked. It's over.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're hitting it right there, you know, by saying that I felt we hit rock bottom when we did the last episode and we discussed FaZe Clan, and I was like, yeah, sure, and what of them, you know, maybe most likely they won't make the playoff, but they'll at least win one game, maybe 2 games, and then losing the decider before the playoff. But losing 2 games, like losing to Aurora is all right, I guess, and even in a game where they played okay, you know, that was arguably the best playing FaZe I've seen in a loss they've had this season. So fair enough for that. They put up a good fight. Aurora also fresh off a grand final, so in that regard you can give them a bit of a leeway. But as you said, today the way they lost to Tai Lu, the fashion they lost in, how jaded the team were, you know, knowing what's at stake as well. We're talking about a team that, as of right now, Duncan, they're not making the major. Like, they're out of the top 17 European VRS ranked teams. I think they're number 19 and number 20, right? Which means they're going to Dracolan and having to do good at Dracolan while also hoping other teams are not getting too much points to even make the major, despite being in the grand final, 4 months ago? Like, it's absolutely crazy. It's a generational downfall, as you said. And that's also my thought, you know. I thought that yes, it was bad in FaZe Clan, and yeah, I sensed that this lineup is dead as well. I sensed that some players within that team have lost faith in trying, you know, have lost faith in putting in enough of an effort to figure it out, whether roster changes are coming, whether they can because of the financial situation in FaZe. We discussed it already. We don't know. Like, and no one is willing to say anything, so it's impossible for us to know.
Sure.
But to get this bad, to have players like Frozen, Kerrigan, Twist to performing at this level, it's crazy. And in my preparation for today's Tai Lu game as well, I like nerding, stats and looking into historical context in terms of how do a player develop year to year and how do they get off to a season, etc. It just struck me, that I opened a conversation last year, which obviously again got a lot of critique for it, saying that when you have an in-game leader like Kerrigan who's fracking at the level Kerrigan is fracking at, he was flirting with the threshold of that's an issue. Like he was flirting with the threshold that pointing. I think it was 0.87 rating for the year last year. That's you can get away with it, if you have a very strong team behind you, if you have firepower on your lineup, which you've had for a long time in FaZe Clan. But if you're not winning and if your firepower around you goes down, then you have to step it up a notch. Otherwise, that becomes an issue. Half a year ago, I think half of the people who engaged with it were like, yeah, we see your point. Half the people are like, what are you talking about? He's the GOAT in-game leader. Doesn't matter if he fracks. This year so far, he's at a 0.83, right? He's getting even worse. So that threshold that I felt we hit last year is even worse off now. And then when you look around him, Frozen is the only player I can count on winning FaZe Clan. Twist is off to the worst start in a season that he's ever had as a player. I think he's at a 102 rating for the year so far, and that's a player who's never been below 115 or something like that the past 4 years. It's at this point, like it's firepower that's an issue in FaZe. It's team play. It's doing silly mistakes. It's the map pool. And we interviewed Kerrigan today after the loss to Tai Lu as well, and he kind of alerted to, there's problems everywhere. Like it doesn't matter where I look. It doesn't matter what I think or how positive I try to be. Like there's so many different problems, so many different issues that you don't even know where to begin. And that's obviously the most sad part about the whole FaZe thing. As I said last episode as well, I'm almost, and this sounds cool, I'm almost happy they lost to Tai Lu today, and I almost hope that they'll do better at Dracoline, because the sooner they don't make the Cologne Major, the sooner that team will do drastic changes. And that's the final point I want to make right here. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm honestly pissed about the communication coming out of the FaZe camp. You fire Neo or you remove Neo as a coach. Fair enough if you don't believe he's the future for your lineup. Okay, he's not the problem. Like he's not one of the first 4 problems that I would attack if I were FaZe Clan. Even more so, you then come into this tournament, which Blast Rotterdam essentially, if you look at the VRS and if you understand the system, this was a major qualifier for FaZe. All they needed at this tournament was 1, maybe 2 wins, and then they would qualify for Cologne because they did so well at the last major. So you're showing now up at a major qualifier. 3 days before that qualifier, you fire your coach and you bring in a guy that has never stood behind them before. How is that a serious approach as an organization to go in what arguably is your most important tournament outside of the major you're trying to qualify for, and you don't even have a coach behind you?
I'm guessing your implication, I agree, also is at least just fire him after this event when they fail to make the major. Like it doesn't make sense to do it at the last minute, does it? Like there was still a chance to win.
Yeah, it's a joke for me. So it's like as Kerrigan kind of said today, like it doesn't matter where I look. It's impossible for me to find a positive outside of Frozen, and even to make matters
even
worse,
he's got worse
in isolation. He got worse. Today he was even playing, somewhat good, back to Frozen and being consistent. But that's again, if you want to take this loss to Tai Lu in isolation, Kerrigan had his best series in I don't know how long. Like we're talking a long time. He finished as the top fragger for FaZe Clan almost. Brokey on the 3rd deciding map on Overpass actually played pretty well. Found impact, did a good job with the AWP. So you're having Kerrigan and Brokey being your 2 best performers in arguably the most important map you could play all season, whether or not you're gonna qualify for Cologne or not. So it's Twist letting you down. It's Frozen and Opus letting you down. It's this Jacob guy, and can we just get around it? Like, yes, you did well in stage 2 and stage 3 at the major, and you were good in pistol rounds, and you had that one good game here at Blast as well, where you did a 6-6-6, play on Inferno bomb site. Yeah, exactly. Overall, though, as a signing, if it wasn't, for my, I guess I'm getting to an age now where I don't really want to get into fights. I don't want to pick anymore. But the Polish scene obviously thinks that I hate Polish players. But in isolation, Jacob is one of the worst signings that's been made, all season long. If you look at last season, he hasn't had the impact you'd like to. He doesn't have the experience. He's not adding anything to the lineup, and he's not a player I look towards bringing FaZe out of the issues. As said, go to Gamer Legion, go develop your career. Maybe he's the real deal in a couple of years from now, but he's simply not ready for it right now. So I think think in terms of decisions made within the team, firing Neo coming into this tournament, signing Jacob in the first place, somehow, some way killing Twist in the process as well. The guy who came back to FaZe Clan and played so exceptionally well when he rejoined the team. He's out of it now as well. So as you said, there's no better way to describe it, that I sense from the outside that this is a dead team. And then the final note as well, just before I forget about it, Kerrigan even started the interview today saying that there's a lot of things he would like to talk about, but now is not the right time. Okay. Like the implications in saying
spicy.
that,
yeah,
that is very spicy.
Because that also, to me, by the way, sounds like there's some org shit he means. That's what I take that like maybe he's not happy with how this was handled or something.
That's what I'm getting as well. We hear from the communication that it wasn't his decision to remove Neo, right? And he doesn't have a say in who they sign, and he doesn't have a say in what player is on his team, etc., etc. So when he's saying that, that's also what I'm thinking, and I can't wait for Kerrigan to come out and tell us, and the public what actually went on in FaZe and what arguably is the worst period that team has ever had.
Yeah, by the way, I'll go one further than you on the Jacob one, mate. You're doing that thing again where you're being magnanimous and trying to be kind and understand people. I don't do that, mate. I'm just, mate, so here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm not Polish. Spoiler, I think that's pretty clear from my career at this point in time. Shout out to EMS1 kind of 8 tier 2014 one time, right? Not only am I not Polish, even though I do like really good Polish players, because I'm not in the Polish community, I'm not obliged to hope that Jacob's really good or hope that their players develop and hope that they have some of the best players in the world. Like I told you on the last episode, if Kaspersky's awesome, suddenly I'm the biggest Polish glazer ever. If he's shit, by the way, he can fuck off too. I'm an elitist. I only care about the best players in Counter-Strike competing at the top level. If you can't do that, don't give a fuck, mate. There's the door. There's plenty more really good players coming in who can do it. And in FaZe, I can tell you there's plenty of players could join this team. So my problem with this whole topic is this. It's actually something I'll give mad props to, believe it or not, Kassad. Because years ago, like back in 2024 in that second season when they were starting to drop off, even when they had Rops back then, when him and Brokey were having like some dodgy games, Kassad actually had a take on Hot Take Point Made that at the time, because it's a hot take show, sounded like, you're going a bit extreme on that. Like, let's see how this plays out. His take was that they already back then needed to kick Rain. And everyone else was like, no, come on, he's still good enough. And it's more, Rops isn't getting the numbers. And Kassad's point back then was, if you ever looked at that FaZe project, what made it so unique was, because of where Carrigan was at in his career and his ability to attract stars, at the time, FaZe was seen as a team that you joined to win the trophies. And so at the time, the key thing he said was, you can only ever let yourself drop to the point that you're one player from being back at number one again. And the sole point he was making was, as long as you're in that position, which is what they did for like 2 or 3 years, then you can still fix it at the end of each season. You can still, remember we thought they did it with the Salation move. Okay, you lost Rops, that's bad, but hey, at least it's pretty dope and that bringing it. So as long as you can do the thing where it just takes one move and you're really attractive because the players joining know it's one move. And if I join, I get to win all the trophies. Not so much Frozen and Liege, but you did think so when he joined. I get it. That was the reputation, right? The problem is by not making those moves at the right time though, especially in 2025, they now got themselves in a position where, at the beginning of the year, we would have been like generous and being you 2 moves from the top because you can keep Frozen and Twist. Carrigan's still good enough, right? I'll go one further now. Bro, most of the team isn't good right now. And in fact, I'll tell you the most alarming thing is the whole but 3 of the players are good. That doesn't even work. Here's why. First of all, Twists and Frozen have both dropped off. But let's say in theory, I do think, by the way, it's so recent that they were good. Tomorrow, if you put them in the right team, they'd be good. Like the joke is if they did an Ertz Malves and fucked off and Twist joined Mouse and Frozen joined Navi, they're probably good tomorrow, mate. They'd probably be HLTV top 20 player again. Yep. Those ones are fine because they're star players. The problem you have is, as you said about Carrigan, notice how the same thing happens for the last 4 years, Pimp. Here's how it goes. When FaZe is really good and are mixing it up and can win any tournament and Carrigan's calling a beautiful game, nobody wants him caught because he's on the greatest minds to ever play CS. But when the firepower isn't good enough, logically he's not going to get any T-side round wins. Then you're just going to see what a shit fragger he is. And that's when everyone then says, fire this guy, get him out the team, replace him with this up-and-coming guy, replace him with someone else role swap to IGL, could have been Rain, now it could be Twist or something. That's what everyone goes at. So the real problem you have is one of the 3 names can't be Carrigan because he actually requires 3 other names to be really good for him to be activated so that you can reach the threshold you're talking about. Because I'm with you. That's also a reason if people don't know why I wanted them to gamble on Simple. Because my logic is I know Simple can be a 1.3 rating player. If you have a 1.3 rating player and Twists and fucking and Delige and Frozen, then mathematically I can have Carrigan do 0 0.89 rating. I can't if everyone else is 1.0, 1.103. You can have the worst fragging in the game. So I'll even go one further. I actually do think the Frozen one is the biggest red flag of all, bro. Because I'll give you a quick angle.
Yeah.
Not only do I think the others have dropped off, by the way, here's a really alarming thing. Twist's last season was mega, even when he joined FaZe. His game has dropped off a fucking cliff, and it wasn't just that one game at Krakow where he didn't have, his config. It's been plenty of games. There was a match here in this tournament that he had a really shit performance in. The reason why the Frozen one is really scary to me, Pimp, is this. I'll give you a quick analogy. It was actually back in your playing days. Remember at the end of 2014 and early 2015 when Kenny S was like the best player in Counter-Strike? He was just smurfing every game, an online game, a LAN game. It didn't matter. Everyone he played, he just was like, at the time we all thought he was going to be the GOAT for real. It was just that insanely good at the game. The problem was, because that was the era when he had to do more because fucking stupid Kaylee got banned and RPK was like still trying to figure out how to play CS again. Because that team actually, outside of Kenny S, lacked a bit of firepower. A lot of people won't know this. One of the reasons why even he eventually dropped off is, bro, it becomes a crazy grind when you're playing the best CS of your whole career and you don't even win the tournament. In fact, sometimes you lose in the semis. I can tell you from knowing Kenny, it wasn't just like, no one can maintain that level. Like, he also got like bombed out by it, mate. And it's one of the reasons he practiced less, and then he sort of get. I worry that something like that's happened to Frozen, because remember that story last year? Maybe he had the chance to join Navi, but maybe he actually said no and was like, "I'll be loyal to." Well, the problem is if that is true, well, you feel like a fool if you're Frozen now, and if everyone else is losing and you have to hard carry. Like, remember that game we said at the major? He had to drop like a 40 bomb to beat that fucking shitter team. Art was on. I can't remember the bloody Fuxor. There you go. He had to drop like a 40 bomb or something to win that game. These people, this is why people don't know how crazy Donk and Simple are. I don't know how they do carry when their teammates are shit, or it looks like you can't win the game, or you have to do a 1.6 rating to win this map. Like, they're inhuman, they're mental, mate. I don't know how they do it. Normal people, normal pros can't be expected to do that. You get enough bad matches and results like this. Like, if you're Frozen and you've won 3 series in the year, even you're going to drop off eventually. And so the problem now becomes, if you took the nameplates off, bro, how many players would you even keep from this team? At this point, we're relying on things like, well, I know Twist would get back to it, and maybe Carrigan if he had the right player. Essentially, the problems, there's almost no answers. There's a million questions and there's almost no answers in this squad right now. It's why I even feel like, I'm with you, it'd actually be better for them to not make the major. Here's why. If it's true they're signing Ash, bro, here's what my dream would be. Don't make the major. I hope you don't. That way, by the way, Ash doesn't even have to wait. He can start now scouting who the next person that's coming in. Could be an AWPer, could be a rifler. Get that figured out. Get going, because you have to completely revamp this squad, mate. There's no but if we just had the right player, like I said, for the last 3 years, there's no going back to what FaZe was. And then lastly, I'll just put this out there. The reason I think the Jacob angle is so scary is because all the other eras of FaZe had like proven quality players that were like, some of them were even legendary players, mate. That's why no one did complain as much about Rain, etc. The problem with Jacob is I've never seen him be a top player. So with him, I don't even know what there is to return to because he's never been there. So I think they're in so much trouble in this squad, mate. I really think it's just done. Like, that's why I'm also scared now. And we're all laughing at some of those poly markets. Like, will Carrigan retire? Like, why would he? I'm sort of low-key scared right now, Mike. If he doesn't get a good roster for the next season, I'm sure he's going to think about it.
Yeah, I'm afraid so too. To be honest, and I think you summarized it pretty well. You know, there's a lot of questions in the whole FaZe scenario right here, and I think the best way to get some answers to all those questions is by them to give up, you know, sooner rather than later. Because I also do fear, to be completely honest, that if they qualify for the major in Cologne and they somehow make it to stage 2 or stage 3, or let's say that at that tournament, you know, Brokey is having another great, like, are you then gonna give him another chance, or is Jacob, you know, showing glimpses again that makes you so like, maybe one more try? Like, I'm so done. Personally, I'm so done giving them more leeway, giving them more chances, giving them more benefit of the doubt. Like, I feel like they earned the right to have a bit of goodwill with everything they've given us the past 4 years. You know, whether you believe in, you know, I hate the term FaZe magic because that died long time ago. But at least the entertainment value that FaZe has given us, I'm okay with giving them some goodwill. I'm okay with giving them a little bit of a longer leash, so to speak, compared to other teams. But even that is run out now. You know, it's like to me, it's I said it today, and I said it last time we spoke as well. The sooner they die, the sooner we get a lot of interesting things happening from the effect of FaZe Clan dying. Whether or not, as you said, that they build a new squad within FaZe Clan, whether Kerrigan goes to a new project where he can once again be the in-game. Like, again, we spoke about, like, what would happen if Kerrigan and Frozen goes to Mouse, as an example. You know, replace Brolin obviously as the obvious one, and then Frozen he can slot in for a lot of the rifling powers in Mouse as well, you know, depending on who you want to get rid of or who you can sell off, you know. I think that would be a super interesting project, and that's something that would make Kerrigan stick to playing Counter-Strike. Like, he is one of the most driven and hardworking personalities that I know within the scene, and I'd say it takes one to know one. He's obsessed with progress. He's obsessed with moving. He's obsessed with getting better. He's obsessed with learning. And if he's in a project where he feels he can do something and he can win stuff still, yes, I don't think he will retire. But that also requires him to be able to either leave FaZe or get a project within FaZe that is motivating him enough. Because I am also at the point where I get your fear in the sense that if he's being presented another project in FaZe, let's say that, again, I don't know his contractual situation, but let's say that he can't leave FaZe the next year or so. And the project that he's being presented with Ash is like, yeah, take this team and build it up from the ground up. Sort of like what he tried to do with Envious, you know, for 6 months when he couldn't find a team. Like, I don't think Kerrigan wants to do that. I don't think he's in the state of his career where he got the mental capacity to do that. So if anything, what I'm hoping, and that is without having any of the answers, to be completely honest, is don't qualify for the major in Cologne and then explode. See whether or not that means Frozen comes somewhere nice, or Kerrigan goes somewhere nice, or Twist goes somewhere nice, or if FaZe somehow, some way find budget, you know, to break the bank and sign someone super, super cool that can change the tide of the team, or whatever that may be. But I'm done caring about FaZe to the extent that if they qualify for Cologne, sure, you know, cool. If they don't, I don't really care anymore. To me, losing to Tyloo today, that was the final straw. That was the showcase of, okay, this team is not good enough to qualify for the major first and foremost, but it's not really relevant to an extent where I want to put too much, you know, effort into caring about them, because they don't really deserve the attention they would be getting.
Yeah, but I will just say, I was looking up there if I could see in a DM what the actual specific thing was. But last year, someone told me something like that. Actually, I think they thought Carrigan's contract didn't have that much time left on it. In fact, I'll tell you right now, because why not? They're at the fucking lowest, and obviously Carrigan can't talk about this shit. It's not from Carrigan, I'll just say that. But I heard from someone who knows these things that, like, within FaZe, I think I actually teased this on a past episode. You know, last year when actually Twist did join, initially they didn't announce who was leaving. Rain was still listed. They had 6 names, and I heard back then that there was maybe even a discussion in FaZe, maybe Rain becomes the IGL and Carrigan retires. So I heard within the org, it's not necessarily the case that the whole project, like, we must have Carrigan. It's more like, you know, it depends on what the situation is. So someone implied to me, maybe this year they were just waiting for his contract to run down and then they replace him or tell him off you go, retire, or off to the glue factory in this analogy. So that part in itself is interesting, because actually if that happened, maybe that would free him up, like you said, to go do one last project. There's also the thing though that also could be what makes this a bomber. If you feel internally like people don't believe in you and you're one of the good pieces of the project, yeah, it's also going to make everything completely collapse. Also, I was even thinking of what you were saying there. From knowing Carrigan, this is another thing I hope people understand. This team isn't one of these teams where you hear those stats like Simple's playing. They're not like fucking around and being bad. The saddest thing of all is a bit like actually when Navi was whack at the beginning of last year when they had their problems with GL. I remember telling people the reason I knew that lineup was done is because since I like to study the patterns in people's map pools, I could tell by the fact that Navi kept swapping around maps, because remember they weren't very good on the old Anubis, remember? They kept swapping around, and especially when Train came in, I could see by how they swapped their veto. That means they're putting in mad work. That means what they're doing is Blades going away and going, right, maybe it's just this map pool we have that's not working, so we'll switch to this pick, like we'll pick Dust 2 for example instead of Mirage, we'll go to there, we'll second veto there. The problem is eventually there's only so many cards you have to play, and you've played them all, and I can tell you, mate, Carrigan hasn't just played them all, he's played them all like 3 times with this core. Like, he's tried everything. That's why when you look at that, there's another thing, Pimp, you can be a bad team and have one map you're still really good on. They have no maps they are good on, mate. There's not a single map FaZe is close to one of the best teams on. And I can tell you, if you do study the patterns happens in the veto, they not only lose their map all day fucking long, mate, even when they win the series, but the veto has changed to show that there's nowhere else to go. They've tried everything. So I do believe Carrigan's tried everything with this roster. I imagine they've even tried everything with Jacob. Those little Polish fanboys going, he's in his wrong roles. They're not idiots, guys. Like, I guarantee they'll have given him some scrims on a map where he played a spot that worked for him. It just probably didn't work out in a way that they wanted to try it in the server. You can even argue, by the way, if it didn't work, it's actually also possibly good for Jacob they didn't put him in that spot. If he failed in his roles, then what will you guys have left to say? And then one last thing on FaZe will be this. You alluded to it earlier. I also hate the way everyone in FaZe has talked. Because listen, I'm pretty sure, especially people who know the drama between Zeus and fucking Twists from Team Liquid, will know Twists can be, here's the thing, I wouldn't say salty, I'd say more like he takes offence easily. Like if he thinks you're talking about something you don't know about, or obviously in that case Zeus implied like his girlfriend was involved, and I can tell you, to him, those topics are off. You shouldn't speak about that, and he is the sort of pro, where even though, by the way, he will reply to you if you DM him, he's the sort of guy that I'd rather you DM him first, you know, but hey, what's going on with this? And if you did that, he'd respect you for it, and he'd let you have a different opinion, but if you don't, he'll get annoyed. He's the sort of person, I saw this during the major, where their whole take when everyone was criticising Brokey and Jacob wasn't to go like, yeah, we are playing like shit, but we need to play better. Their take was almost a bit pissy, sort of like, but we know what Brokey's capable of, you know, that's why when he did the run in the playoffs, they were all like, they were making it sound like, you know, they believed him and that's why he did it. Like, here's the problem, guys. You know that meme? I looked it up, the wording. Everyone's seen this meme on Twitter, the one where it goes, the haters said I couldn't do it. And they were correct. Honestly, great call from the haters. This is the problem, guys. If within the team you want to do that thing of like, yeah, but you don't know the real Brokey. You don't know. You know what? You don't know the real Brokey, bro. You're telling me this guy's going to do something about it. At this point in time, I might not be right about the specifics. Maybe I don't know exactly why he sucks. But if you believe he's secretly really good and I'm just being a hater, I'm sorry, I'm right and you're wrong in that scenario. Like maybe in this scenario, something you're seeing in practice, or to be fair to them, maybe all the years with Brokey where he was good and he bounced back, maybe that's blinding you a little bit. And I know what you mean, mate, because actually the difference is, I think if you look at the messaging at this event, they're not even doing that shit anymore, bro. Any cope has just gone, and even they know it's over. They just do, mate. That's why, in a weird way, also, we need to also get this new coach thing in, because we can't even start the next chapter till they officially... And by the way, if it isn't Ash at this point in time, it'd be really weird that he did a stream and accidentally said we while talking about FaZe. So we're just going to assume it is him at this point in time. By the way, don't even hit them. What do you think of that move, actually? What are your thoughts if they bring Ash in?
Oh, that depends on what they want to do. I think Ash, have shown in Gamer Legion that he's capable of building a team and he's capable of getting the most out of the assets that he can bring in. I also do think that sometimes he's getting a bit too much credit for what happened in Gamer Legion, because there's been some great pickups and some great, events, but there was also a lot of pickups that didn't really work out, and those are easily forgotten about. But I think in terms of like bringing in a coach that has potential and can help out FaZe Clan, I think he's a great pickup. I think that'll be interesting. But is he being picked up to manage a quote unquote super team with superstars? Or is he being picked up because FaZe now realizes that, okay, we have to build from the ground up, and he's the best at that? Like, because that's my worry. Like, if you sign a guy like Ash, if you're FaZe at the very least, if I'm GMing that team, I'm like, okay, I don't have the budget I used to have. If you're correct about Kerrigan's contract running out, I'd imagine his salary is quite up there. You still have Twist on what I assume is a long-term contract after signing him not so long ago. So there's only so much money to go around. So you let go of Kerrigan, you free up some money right here. You bring in Ash, who is not going to be cheap either, but not too expensive as a coach. And then you make him build another team on a budget, like he's done with Gamer Legion. If that's the goal and that's the vision for FaZe, is they want to bank on young talent and maybe bank on Ash getting more out of Jacob or whatnot, then I think that's a great signing. If you're signing Ash to, revamp the team around the core of Frozen, Twist, Kerrigan, and another star they signed because they're willing to spend some money, then he hasn't really proven that he can be that guy. So that's a bit more of a gamble, But overall, with the current market and who you can get at the moment, I don't see why you shouldn't give Ash a chance. But it entirely depends on what the vision is for me to make a call on that.
Also, I'm just going to make a prediction. Pure speculation, obviously. I don't have any inside info on this one. And if I did, I probably wouldn't say anyway. But I definitely don't on this one, honest for real. Right, which is, In a weird way, Pimp, the reason why I also think this is the right move, if you go back in time somewhere like 6 months, I'm almost certain someone like Sam on Feed the Trolls has asked me a similar question, because obviously he's a famous coach that everyone loves at the moment in the community. I think she's even said, should they outshine Ash? Back then, I used to say no, because it's like, he's not really a FaZe Clan type coach, is he though? Again, FaZe Clan coaches are more man management. You let Carrigan do it and you have star player. Tell you what, mate, with all the things we've seen about the roster moves they've made and seemingly where their budget is at, actually he seems like an appropriate coach for FaZe. It looks like they're going to have to go out there and scout a player that no one else wants and see something in them and probably not spend much money and then hope it works. Like, actually, that is literally what Ash has done the whole time. Like, fair play. I don't even hate that as a signing. I also do think as well, this is a harsh comment, but it's just true. In a weird way, he's one of the only people, Pimp, who can join this particular project, and it's not actually much of a downgrade from Game of Legion. Like, you know what I mean? For him, even this is an upgrade, mate. You know, he's working with Frozen and Twists, and he's got Carrigan. He's one of the few coaches, like, for real, that can join and be excited about the project. No one's joined. All the other great coaches, mate, aren't coming down to this team in a complete shit, terrible scenario where even worse, because it's FaZe, you have the names that look like you should be a super team, but you probably behind the scenes we're imagining don't have the money and the pull to get big names. That's what you call in English, that's called a poison chalice, Pimp. That's like going now and join, well, I would be rude and say something like your team Chelsea or something, but it's like going and joining a team in the Premier League that has a bunch of good players, but they're just not quite good enough right now. And the problem with that is you get blamed if you lose, even if the problems, by the way, were there before you got there and will be there after you. Like, I mean, actually the better example would have been Manchester United, wouldn't it? Like, everyone who joins Manchester United will get hated on for the next 2 years until they become really good again. So I actually think for Ash, it's even an appropriate, like I say, for him to step up in his career. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I'm curious to see if it happens and when it happens, you know, because the whole timing of it, you know, showing up at this tournament without a coach, to me, that pissed me off, you know, that the value and the signal value in that and did not understand.
I would love to know the reason, because I'm with you, mate. I just don't get what the reason, like, what did he gain from doing the kick now? Because I genuinely worry, by the way, and if this is true, whoever made the decision is a bozo, because I'm fine with the org, because look, they're the ones who hire the staff. But here's what's weird, Pimp. The only angle I can even think of is them thinking that because, you know, oh my God, they fired the coach, we better win now. Like, I mean, so in a movie that might make sense. In real life, that makes less sense because you just got less staff to help you prepare.
Yeah, especially considering that, let's be honest, like, again, without knowing how Neo is working within FaZe Clan, as you described before, and I've said it before, like, Kerrigan, he likes the coach to be his second hand. You know, he likes the coach to back him up in whatever vision he's having. It's not like you're firing Blade from Navi 2 days before an event, you know, where the whole team is built around his vision and his system, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say the Neo system in FaZe Clan, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. True. So in that regard, it's like, what are you getting out of it? Like, it's not like you're doing a wake up call or you're changing something drastically. If anything, it's just someone else taking a time out and patting you on the back. So yeah, I don't know. And that's what I said as well. Like, the communication and the lack of communication from FaZe Clan pisses me off, which is why I'm so intrigued by what Kerrigan said today, that there's a lot of stuff he wants to speak about, but now it's not the right time. Like, that is as clear as you can say it without saying anything.
Yeah. All right, here's what I'll do. I'll end on this note. I've thought up the ultimate comparison and insult for FaZe Clan. And if you hear this insult, you'll know, one, this is how bad it's gone, but two, this is how bad it's gone, mate. Think about it, right? Which is this kind of a move where they fired Neo before it's even, like, over. Mate, that gives me vibes of a certain team in the Premier League no one wants to be compared to, and it's even become an adjective. That is a fucking Spursy move, Pimp. Because you know the famous one where before Mourinho was going to play a fucking cup final, they fired him. And it's like, surely if you fire him after the cup final. That is like a Spurs level move where it's like, if people don't know, people think that's the ultimate cursed team. You don't want to fucking join that team because even though it could be great, they fuck it up every time. And then obviously in this case, I agree. I think also, there's another thing, by the way. If we're blaming Neo and Carrigan and players, I'll tell you what, who else gets the blame unless this next FaZe roster is mega? Fucking FaZe Clan. The org themselves, whoever it is, look, I don't know who it is because no one really knows. They put certain people off. By the way, there's another thing, by the way, as a last thing. You know, last year, there were all the real famous FaZe streamer people commenting on the simple. Those people are just fake fame. As far as I know, they're not even the people who make the decisions. They just chose to, like, present themselves as the one. And, like, because remember, there was that one, I can't even remember them because they're all fucking COD people, man. I'm not a COD guy. But one of them was even, like, after some mad simple highlight against Mongols, he was like, I better sign him now. It's like, I don't think that guy even signs contracts, bro. I think he was just saying some shit on stream. So, but that is another problem I have. If we're in sports, mate, plenty of people know the fucking owners and the technical director of football, and they do get told you should be fired if you keep fucking up. So, as well as firing players and replacing them, if this keeps continuing on, eventually someone above in the structure needs to be fired too, mate. We need to get someone competent in there.